You are listening to the Fitz and Healthy podcast. I am your host, Dr. Lauren Fitzgerald, also known as Lauren Fitz. I'm a medical doctor, a fitness instructor, an entrepreneur, a health and fitness coach, but most importantly, I am a lover of life. And here on the Fitz and Healthy podcast, I intend to give you a ton of great information and knowledge that will serve as potential power so that you can live a life by design and make it more fits and healthy. And don't forget to listen to the disclaimer at the end. I'm not your doctor, yo. All right, enjoy the episode. Much love. Ciao. Hello and welcome. My name is Dr. Lauren Fitz, and you are listening to the Fitz and Healthy podcast. I am joined by my beautiful co-host, Cinthanie from Cinthanie.com. What's up, girl?
Hey, girl. Hey.
How you doing?
Doing.
So today we have an amazing podcast because this is our first ever emergency podcast.
You're expediting this podcast.
I completely made up the words emergency podcast because I didn't realize, a real emergency in my life up until now was totally different, right? It had to do with real life or death.
Good point.
This is not immediate life or death, but it does have to do with the episode of the podcast being released sooner than later. And we're doing it for a reason because there was a big article that was released, 5 or 6 days ago. And you and I both messaged each other. We were like, we need to address this.
So, I was like, can we expedite this? Because this is a teachable moment and we have to talk about it right now, not 4 weeks from now, but right now.
Seriously. What most podcast listeners don't realize is that we film and record our podcast. And so the one that was supposed to be released this coming Monday was actually recorded about a month ago.
Yeah.
But that's going to be pushed aside because this one's going to be released on Monday. And
this
it has
is critical
with saturated fat, specifically coconut oil, and why our personal opinion is different than the AHA's. So, but before we start, I want to make sure that we get to the iTunes review of the week because apparently I keep forgetting to get that. But we're literally not even 2 months into the Fitz and Healthy podcast. We already have 140 reviews, which is
5-star reviews.
5-star
all
reviews.
of them.
And we're almost at 5,000 downloads. Not 5,000. I know, right? 50,000. It's crazy. It's so we want to celebrate those people that took the time to leave a review. And so you have picked our iTunes review of the week, right?
I have. So this iTunes review of the week says amazing, and it is by Devil Do Girl. It says, this is my first time listening to or trying a podcast. Lauren, you are amazing. So engaging and so easy to relate to. Now I know what I'll be listening to at work where I need the positive vibes and encouragement the most. Love you.
Oh, that gives me chills.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. Thank you, girl. I appreciate it. So I just want to start this off by saying thank you to that podcast reviewer and to everyone. The support that we've gotten is just crazy awesome.
Yeah.
And continuing to hear from everyone and the feedback, we're definitely spreading knowledge. And that's the whole point of this podcast. Yeah. And of course, today has to do with nutrition, but obviously, if this is your very first Fitz and Healthy podcast to listen to, we talk about everything from exercise, nutrition. In fact, weren't we supposed to talk about exercise and interval training today?
We were supposed to be talking about HIIT, but
what happened was,
if there's a critical topic, then we're going to cover it. Yes. So that will come another day, but this was just a little bit more
pressing.
I'm sensitive. Yeah.
For sure. And if the phrase emergency podcast hasn't ever been coined, I'm totally going to take credit for that. Okay.
Just know.
Yeah, exactly. So first things first, I want the listener to know, don't just trust what we have to say. Okay.
Yes, please.
The underlying point of this, and anytime I do a live broadcast or a podcast or make a post, I want people to learn to start thinking for themselves, because we have gotten to the place that we're at because we just blindly trust people, organizations, associations, and government. And we just blindly trust that they have our best interests at heart. And so if you take away anything from this at all, just take away, hey, okay, I respect Lauren and Cinthanie, but I'm going to go question and I'm going to start my own quest for knowledge. And maybe you've already started your own quest for knowledge. So maybe this pushes you to that next level. Like, for instance, you're so far ahead of the game for most people in your generation. I mean, the fact that you've read any books on nutrition is, no, seriously.
Robert is laughing way too hard at saying that right now. I don't know if I should be offended or complimented by that.
It was totally meant as a compliment. No, but seriously, like I can't even imagine if I would have started reading about nutrition when I was in my 20s, because I waited until it was about when I was at 34. And the reason why I know that age, because I'm 37 right now, is because that was the first time that I really had the epiphany of, okay, I've always been in the gym. I exercise all the time. I just posted a video that went viral on Turn Down for What. At that point in time, I was teaching 4 Club Fitz classes a week. And I don't mess around in my Club Fitz class. It's a great, in fact, my girl Tana, one of my friends, she brought her son. His name's Zaire. Awesome dude. Met him last week, and he can dance like really well. So he came and took the class. The dude is like 19, right? And by the second song, he started to get winded. He even said, he was like, I was kind of worried. Don't mess around. It's a really challenging, great class. And Robert can say, because he's taken my class. You've kind of taken my class because I taught on a cruise ship, but it's not quite the same as if you were to come.
I believe that. I believe that.
But that being said, I saw in this video that I still struggled with my body and my weight. And that was when I started learning about nutrition, because I realized that it's really actually not about the exercise. And I tried to out exercise a bad diet, what I realize is a bad diet now. So I started learning and reading books. And so if people take away anything from this, go start reading books and read books on both sides. So if you're a vegan, I want you to read a book that has a cover that has a big plate of ribs on it, like by Nina Teicholz. Okay. Yeah. And if you are one that is like ketogenic, I want you to read books that support the vegan lifestyle. Like always be questioning and constantly expanding your brain. And I will tell you, I don't know everything. I know way more now than I did when I first started this. But the fact is that you're so young and already know so much and that was one of the things that my mom was talking about when she was giving you a compliment. Like, oh, I can't believe how smart and I mean, she's just so well spoken. And
that's because she's never been around me in person.
Right? You have to do that. For the people that watch us on our Fitz and Healthy podcast YouTube channel, you have to stand up and show your t-shirt, because the t-shirt is awesome. And I need
t-shirt one. is me on a shirt for real. 100%.
Yes. It says, I've got a great heart. I've got a great heart, but this mouth.
So if you have been with us since the beginning, you were probably there for when I, had a little mess up and dropped the F-bomb on live. I have become a recovering swearaholic since then.
And I too, I'm there at the recovering swearaholic. I actually didn't grow up swearing. I don't think you did either, because I was raised in a pretty religious home as well.
I was, but I think that's why I curse so much. Just because in high school, I know it stems from high school, because I was a little rebel in high school. Surprise.
No,
Shut up. but I was a little rebel in high school, and that like it was something that made me feel like empowered, like I had the choice of what I was going to sit. And then it's just kind of like been a bad habit since.
Yeah.
So.
Mine, I, mine was definitely from medicine, and especially being in the operating room.
Yes, girl. Yes, the medical field did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. That too.
And people that are listening to the podcast, maybe this is your first episode and you're like, wait, the operating room, what? So I'm a board certified anesthesiologist. I gave up the practice of medicine about 19, 20 months ago in December of 2015. And, but I spent many an hour of my life in the operating room, and anyone that's ever been in the operating room knows that we have a twisted sense of humor. We can have really bad potty mouths, but
Yeah.
in defense, I think it's because it's a great mechanism to deal with the crap that we see, because we see really awful stuff that normal people shouldn't ever see ever.
Yeah.
So, okay. So first things first, let's talk about the article. So how did you find out about the article?
Because, okay, so I woke up, opened up my Facebook like I always do, and I had a ton of messages. And I mean, my inbox is pretty busy, but not like it was that morning. And so I looked, and it was all these people sharing with me this article that was published by, who was it published by? It was published by USA Today, that the AHA, which is the American Heart Association, came out saying that coconut oil is bad for you. And so my first reaction was like, yes, but let me explain, because this is a teachable moment. And so I was like, yes, this is going to pique people's interest. Like, this is perfect. So I was like equal parts angry about the fact that like, this is where we're at, but equal parts like, yes, this is a pivotal teachable moment. So anyways, I got a bunch of those in my inbox. And so I read through it, and I just again, like I said, it just confirmed for me this is a teachable moment.
so very true. I actually had pretty much the same. My inbox crazy, and I'm glad that not too many people posted it on my wall, because I don't like sharing misinformation.
Yes, exactly. Everybody was like, where can I find this article? And I was like, I'm not going to share it with you because I don't want to promote that information to you. If you want to go find it yourself, yes. But I never shared the article because I didn't want to add value to that content.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So for those of you that are listening to this and you're like, well, tell me what the article said. So it talks about the fact that coconut oil. Okay. One thing that we have to look at is that foods have different compositions of fat. So we're going to talk about in this episode, we're going to talk about the different kinds of fat. But specifically, coconut oil is about 90% saturated fat. And saturated fat is kind of what we're going to focus on today. Okay. And we're going to use this as a teaching tool. And also, I'm sure it will lead to, I 100% know that we're going to talk about fats in different ways, i.e. like cholesterol and all that kind of good stuff, right? But today, because it's so focused on saturated fat, that's what we're going to be talking about. And so for decades, saturated fat has been vilified, and it's been vilified pretty much since the 1950s. And Ansel Keys, anyone that has read any kind of nutrition books that are in favor of fighting the low-fat craze, all of us have read about Ansel Keys. Almost every single book that I've read talks about him.
Yes.
and is he still alive?
I don't think so.
I don't think he is. But
probably because he didn't eat enough fat.
No, in fact, okay. Actually, so in Nina Teicholz's book, she actually talks about the fact that he did eat fat. Like, he didn't even follow his own recommendations, if you will.
I think we did talk about this, actually. It's coming back.
Yeah.
We did talk about this on an episode.
But I feel sorry for his family members. But I'm sure they're super uber wealthy.
They're not hurting, I'm sure.
Because he benefited hugely financially from this huge movement that ultimately led to all of these epidemics that we see in the United States today. And so it starts off back in the 1950s when he tried to convince, and he successfully did, convince big governing bodies and big important associations that there is a connection between the amount of saturated fat you eat in your diet to heart disease. And this is where everything started to change. And so first things first, let's talk about the different kinds of fat. Okay. So of course you represent Cinthanie, you represent the non-medical trained, just the layperson. I hate saying that because that sounds bad, but it's not meant as bad.
No, I'm not like offended by that or anything. So don't feel bad.
For the listeners, that's one of the main reasons that I wanted you to be on this podcast with me, because sometimes medical professionals can talk too much medical jargon and speak over people's heads without realizing, without intention. And you're the voice for everyone that doesn't have any kind of medical degree.
Yeah.
So what is your understanding of fats and the different kinds of fats?
Well, the only one that I really understand is saturated fat, because when I came into like the health and fitness realm and started caring about that, that was one of the first things that I was taught about. So I've always wondered though, like, why is trans fat, like, what's the difference between trans fat and saturated fat and polyunsaturated fat and all that kind of stuff. And so I think it's I'm interested to see what you say in relation to those being different.
Cool. So tell me your understanding of saturated fat, since that's what you know a little more about than the other types of fat.
Well, I know that our brain has saturated fat in it. Like our body has to have saturated fat to survive. And so it just makes sense that you need to consume fat, because that's what your body has to have, that as a source of fuel. Like we've talked about in other episodes, your body has two forms of fuel that it burns. It's either carbs or fat, and your body can completely sustain itself without carbs, but it cannot sustain itself without fat.
All right. So let's talk about, and a good point. I remember in medical school learning literally on the cellular level, like our cell membranes are made up of a lipid bilayer. Lipid means fat. And I remember having the conscious thought of, okay, if every single cell in our body has this lipid bilayer as its membrane content, then how is it that we shouldn't be eating foods with fat? Like, it didn't make sense, but you just trusted, because I cringe at how many people I gave the advice, well, just eat a low fat diet and exercise more, and that's going to cause all of your problems to go away.
Yeah.
And I'm one of many people that have given that advice, whether they be medical or not, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about the different kinds of fats. Okay. So there are 4 different kinds of fats. Okay. One of which is completely like 100% frankenfood, meaning completely fake, right? Like it's not found in nature, and that's the trans fat. So we're going to talk about that in a little bit. Trans fats are illegal in lots of countries. Our lovely government hasn't banned them completely, but they finally admitted that they are bad enough that if a food source has trans fats in it, they have to label it. But there's always that little clincher, that little loophole, because if it's less than a certain parts per million, it still doesn't have to have that label. So a good example is whipped cream. Per serving, it's lower than that parts per million, so it doesn't have to show that it has trans fats, but it's all trans fats. So it's all about these food companies figuring out how to trick you and me, that's bad grammar, you and me as the consumer, so that we buy their product thinking that it's heart healthy. Okay. So trans fat is one of the 4 categories. And so most people, I believe, are coming to the awareness, if you will, that trans is bad. They don't know really what trans means, but they know that it's bad, right?
Yeah.
and I'm going to get a little geeky and sciencey here in a little bit. I don't want to totally lose listeners, because I realize that not everyone likes the geeky science side, but I do believe that if you understand some basics in the science realm, that it gives you more power to make the decision. Okay, I get it. I get why I shouldn't be eating trans fats, right?
Mhm.
So we've got saturated and non-saturated, okay? And it all has to do on the chemical level. So fats are made up of 3 different atoms: carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen, okay? And it all has to do, go back to chemistry, and it all has to do with what kind of bonds they have, double bonds versus non-double bonds, okay? And so you can think of fats saturated versus unsaturated, okay? Now, in the unsaturated side, you have the 3, so there's 4 total categories, right? So there's saturated, and then the other 3 are unsaturated. One of the 3 is trans, which we're going to talk about why that's so terrible. But the other 2 are monounsaturated versus polyunsaturated, okay? And so let's talk about, just briefly, some examples of foods that are known to be polyunsaturated fats versus monounsaturated. So monounsaturated are the foods that have been made famous from the Mediterranean diet. Okay, so foods that you would think of when I say Mediterranean diet, what comes to mind?
I don't know why, but olives just came to mind.
Olives and olive oil. That's one of the cholesterol lowering monounsaturated fats that was popularized by the Mediterranean diet. And so some examples of monounsaturated: olive oil, lard, chicken, and duck fat. Okay, those are just some examples. Now remember that the percent of saturated fat versus unsaturated fat is different. So like I said, in coconut oil, it's 90% saturated. But when you say saturated, you automatically just think of certain foods that you know are high in saturated fat, right? So polyunsaturated fat. So those are the ones that are referred to as PUFAs, okay? So it's a acronym. So PUFA. Polyunsaturated fatty acids, right? And so the PUFAs can be categorized, but
I'm gonna laugh every time you say
PUFAs.
that. Stop. I'm sorry, proceed.
So we have
tell what kind of student I was.
Yeah, it's okay. But the fact is that you might not have had the same grades that I did in science, but we both have learned the same stuff.
Yeah, that's one thing that I did want to point out, is the fact that even though you are a medical doctor, you mentioned that all the information that you have is from books. So it's really empowering for people that are not medical to know that they have access to the same information on nutrition that you do. Just a sidebar. Anyways, proceed.
So PUFAs can be described by 2 different ways: omega-3s versus omega-6s. Okay. Yeah. And both are essential, but the problem with the PUFAs is that we consume way too many of the omega-6s and not enough of the omega-3s. Okay. So just based on your knowledge, can you give me some examples of omega-6 rich fats?
Not off the top of my brain. Can I phone a friend?
I love it. Yes, you can phone. So how I like to think about this is an acronym: the 3 C's, 3 C's, 3 S's, and a P. Okay, because that when I first started learning about the kind of oils that are not good for us, I was like, oh man, that's a lot. And I think in acronyms, right? So the 3 C's are, you want to guess them? What kind of oils?
What kind of what?
Oils.
Oh, oils. Canola?
Okay. Yep.
Corn oil?
Yep.
I don't know what the 3rd C is.
Cottonseed.
Cottonseed. That's right. Okay.
Yes. So would you like to guess the 3 S's? I'm putting you on. See, what the listeners don't realize is that you have no idea what kind of questions I'm going to ask you.
She throws me. I feel like a poodle jumping through hoops. So I'm just going to say phone a friend when I don't know the answer. So phone a friend.
But it helps me because it also reminds me of what
You need to explain.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. So the 3 S's, the kind of oils, fats. Do you want to try and guess?
I'm going to phone a friend on this one.
So the soybean oil.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And sunflower. Okay. And then the P. Do you want to guess the P?
Palm oil.
Nope. So 3 C's, 3 S's, and a P. It's peanut oil.
Oh.
Those are the fats, the fatty acids that are rich in omega-3 fatty acids. All right. So we got the PUFAs, right? We've named examples of the omega-6 PUFAs. Now the omega-3 PUFAs. Would you like to guess?
A salmon?
Fish oils and flaxseed. So those are great examples. And so the ideal ratio that we are looking for, that we should have, is 1-to-1, omega-6 to omega-3s. Do you want to guess what the standard American diet ratio is?
I have no idea, but I think it's probably way more omega-6 than it is omega-3.
100%. But the ratio is crazy. Like it gets as high as like 25 to 30 times what it should be. So like every 30-to-1. Omega-6 to omega-3. And the reason why is because all of those omega-6s are produced from big food companies that support big agriculture, that have big money, that have their hands in the pockets of big government.
Which segues right into why this article even exists.
Exactly. So now we're going to talk about saturated fats. Okay, so give me some examples that you know of saturated fat.
Avocados.
Yep, like my favorite food.
Meat, like fats found in fats found in meat is what I was trying to say.
Okay, palm oil is actually saturated fat.
Really?
Yep.
That surprises me.
Yep.
So are not all saturated fats created equal?
We'll talk about that. Calm down.
Okay.
So ones that you didn't mention are cocoa butter, dairy, and eggs. And some people consider eggs dairy, but both. The poor egg was vilified. I mean, how many people still eat egg white omelets?
Yes. Yeah. They take out the yolk.
I've lived in Newport Beach now for 7 months. And I went, my girl, I had a friend in town that she was visiting, and we went to this really healthy place for brunch. And I ordered an omelet that has avocado, bacon, spinach, yum. Like I thinking about it, my mouth is watering. But when I ordered it, the guy was like, do you want it egg white? And I looked at him, I'm like, who eats egg whites anymore? And he goes, you're in Newport Beach. A lot of people do. I'm like, oh goodness, because the poor yolk has been vilified because that's where the cholesterol is, right?
Yeah.
The saturated fat, the cholesterol, it leads to heart disease. So we have examples of saturated fat, and we have been led to believe that saturated fat not only makes you fat, but it makes you have high cholesterol, and it leads to heart disease. Okay, right? Okay. That's kind of your understanding?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what if I were to tell you that saturated fat does raise cholesterol?
I would believe you.
Okay.
I would.
But the kind of cholesterol that it raises is what people are not talking about. And big health organizations like the American Heart Association are not talking about.
Yeah.
So what I want people to understand is that let's get back to really good science. Okay. Really good scientific trials are double-blinded, controlled, randomized studies that take billions of dollars and many years and the ability to control all of these factors. So the reality of us ever actually having a very good study that looks at nutrition is pretty much 0%. because you would have to take a large body of people and control everything they eat, all of the exposures that they are exposed to, all of the stress, like all of these other factors that go into inflammation. And I say inflammation, we'll talk about that later. Okay. But the fact is that pretty much almost all of our nutrition studies have been epidemiological, which means that they look and they study a group of people that basically fill out surveys. Now, can you tell me what you ate last Friday for food?
No.
So you mean you can't tell me what you ate over the last year?
No, pizza. I can confirm that pizza is somewhere in there.
Can you tell me how many times a week you ate pizza?
No idea.
This is my point. The fact is that so many of our nutrition studies that are quoted, that have been very influential in all of the guidelines from the USDA, from the recommendations on the AHA website, the American Diabetes Association, all of these studies are based on studies that really are poorly done studies. But these big organizations have focused on what they want to and hidden the stuff that they don't want to bring to light.
Yeah, they have an ulterior motive. So the studies are done just right and funded by just the right people in order to prove their point.
Yes.
For example, the AHA received over $12 million from AstraZeneca, which is a company that was purchased by Pfizer. This is why I was asking you about Pfizer earlier, which makes Lipitor, which is a cholesterol-lowering medication. And the AHA just came out saying that coconut oil affects that. It
makes me so angry. I mean, still, like, I didn't just learn anything new yet. Hearing you say it, it still makes me angry.
Yeah.
Have you read the Nina Teicholz book yet?
I have not.
Okay. That needs to be your next nutrition book that you read.
Cool.
I love this book, and I would like to get her on an interview for the podcast in the future. So she, and I don't know what she still does. I don't know if she's still a reporter for I believe it was the New York Times or one of the major businesses like New York Times. And she started off writing this book based on a little article she did. And she got her eyes open to like all of the corruption that is behind nutrition and food and government and whatnot. And she literally, I believe she said that it took her 10 years to write this book because so much of the information and the science had been hidden. And like literally it's a page turner, honestly, because you get to realize like the scientists that questioned the bad science basically ended up being bullied out of their career, because the fact is, as a scientist, you have to make money. And if you are pointing out the flaws of big research that was funded by whatever company that goes against their main product, you're not going to be hired. You're not going to be asked to speak at these, it's maddening.
Yeah.
So Nina Teicholz, if you're going to read any book to start off with to explain why fat is not what we fear it to be, it's is it My Big Fat Surprise or The Big Fat Surprise? And it has a picture of literally ribs on the front of it with an angel halo over it. I mean, it's a great cover, but it's written by someone that has she has no medical degree, no nutrition degree, but she is someone that is looking for all the flaws and everything. And I mean, it's very well written.
Yeah.
So what these big companies want you to believe is that eating saturated fat increases cholesterol, which i.e. causes heart disease, right? Yeah. That's why we care, right? The first part is true. Eating saturated fat does increase cholesterol. But what if the increased cholesterol didn't lead to heart disease? then you'd ask, well, why do I care about increased cholesterol, right?
Yeah.
You should. I'm not telling you to not care about cholesterol,
Mhm.
but knowing what kind of cholesterol to care about is the key. This is where not big food, big pharma, they don't want you to know this because their biggest drug seller is the statin drugs, which we know statins lower LDL. Okay. What they don't do is they don't help with HDL, and LDL, not all LDL is created equal. And so tell me your understanding about LDL.
So well, first of all, HDL and LDL, if you don't know, because not many people even know that there's different types of cholesterol,
Right.
LDL and HDL are two different types of cholesterol. And HDL is supposed to be the healthy cholesterol. LDL is supposed to be the bad cholesterol. But it goes even deeper than that, where LDL, there is fluffy cholesterol and there's dense cholesterol. And that's what really you need to be paying attention to.
Very good. Very good. I'm impressed, my young Padawan.
Hey, there's more to this blonde hair than you know.
So the layperson knows the good cholesterol versus bad cholesterol, HDL versus LDL. And literally every year, because my dad's been on statins for years, and every year since medical school, he's always sent me his lipid profile and asked me to analyze it and tell him how he's doing and pat him on the back and whatnot. So HDL stands for high density lipoproteins, and LDL is low density lipoproteins. And so, so you are correct in the fact that HDL is the good cholesterol. And in fact, what drug companies don't want you to know is that that's actually way more important than LDL. So if you can increase your HDL, you are definitely doing a much better job at preventing heart disease than if you were to worry about lowering your LDL, right? How can you raise HDL? Do you know?
I'm
putting
a
you
friend.
Yeah. I love it. We need to make those on t-shirts too. Hashtag Fitz and Healthy podcast.
No, we say we're going to make so many t-shirts, and we have yet to make a single t-shirt at the time that this is being recorded. Who knows? But
no, they're in the it's in the works. It's in the works. No worries.
Yes. One step at a time.
Right. So ways that you can increase your HDL is by nutrition and exercise. Two things that no one can make money off of.
Shocker.
Yep. They don't want you to know that. They don't want you to know that. That's the bottom line. Okay, so then let's talk about LDL. So LDL can be analyzed into differentiated. That's the word I was looking for. Differentiated into two different types: the large fluffy versus the small dense, right? Now, if you were to go to, I'm totally going to pull this number out of my butt, but probably like 98% of doctors that are Western medicine doctors, if they send a lipid profile, they're not going to analyze the LDL and differentiate between if you have more large fluffy versus small dense. Okay. So that's the benefit of finding a functional medicine doctor. Functional medicine doctors are typically, they're Western medicine doctors with Eastern medicine mind. They want to prevent you from needing any other specialty doctors because they look at natural ways of preventing disease. And of course, as Hippocrates said, food is thy medicine, right? But big pharma doesn't want you to know that. Big food or big pharma, because big food is all fake food that they create and goes through a lab and a big process and whatnot. So let's get back to the point. So we have saturated fat that, yes, it increases your cholesterol, but it increases your good cholesterol, your HDL, and it increases large fluffy particles of the LDL, not the small dense. You want to guess what increases the small dense?
Insulin?
That evil fat category that we talked about earlier. Yeah, but they don't want you to know that. Another thing that is really important on the lipid profile, well, a couple of other things. is the ratio of, do you want to guess?
Phone a friend.
Friends today.
I'm learning along with you today, though. That's why I was excited to talk about this.
You're right.
Because you and I have never like sat down and talked about it together. Like it's just been a mutual thing that we both like get it, but I've never been able to like pick your brain about it. So
Right.
I'm like a sponge right now, just absorbing all of this.
I love it. So the ratio of total cholesterol to HDL, that is the ratio that you want to look at. And this all goes back to pharmaceutical companies not wanting you to understand the nitty gritty. They just want you to just blanketly understand that eating fat is bad and you need the statin drug and you need it for the rest of your life. In fact, did you see the post that I posted last night? I did an experiment and I just asked how much money is spent on drugs every month, because a lot of Americans live on a tight budget, and part of their tight budget is budgeting for medicines or money that goes to medicine every month. Mm-hmm. So it was pretty interesting. There's, a lot of people actually, because I have a lot of people that follow me online that are into health and fitness. So, there's definitely a large percentage of people that said zero. It'd be interesting to look at, the population of everyone that is my friend on Facebook and because I've got friends all ages and all health levels, right? But of course, you can skew that view because the people that follow me are more actively involved in their health and fitness and whatnot, right? Yeah. But the fact is that big drug companies, whether it's cholesterol lowering medicine, acid reflux medicine, hypertension medicine, depression medicine. I'm trying to think of other autoimmune suppressants. So autoimmune disorders take immune system depressing agents. I can't talk. Apparently, I need some.
It's okay. I said feet. It's
right. You did. But they want you to get on these drugs and believe that you have to be on them the rest of your life, because that is just, that's money. The rest, it's huge money. I don't think people understand how much money is just from getting one person to believe that they are going to be on a drug the rest of their lives. Mm-hmm. They don't want voices like ours to reach people.
And sadly, in the culture that we are in right now, it's so easy for them to do that because people don't want to have to work or do the research. They just want to be told what to do. So it's like, if the AHA told me coconut oil is bad, I'm not going to do it because they did the research for me. I don't need to figure it out. There's never been a time that side of it is more empowered because of how unempowered we are. We just hand that power over. We're just okay with somebody else doing the work for us and just accepting the answer and not questioning it.
Exactly. And it comes down to it. There is a lot of laziness. People just, they don't want to put in the time to learn. And, it kills me because it doesn't take much effort to learn some basics about health and nutrition that potentially change your life forever. Yeah. So, okay. So getting back to, is coconut oil bad? Well, the long story short is I will continue to eat coconut oil every day. Mm-hmm. I think that it's a great source of fat. Like anything, it can be eaten to excess. And there are certain things that I'm not sure if I want to get into this geeky science part of it, but eating too much of coconut oil can mess with your gut flora and lead to inflammation. So,
too much of anything is never good. So everything in moderation.
True. And, we haven't even done a podcast about sustainability and what, the effects, like coconut oil versus palm oil, just getting palm oil, what it does to our environment, sustainability, that could be a whole podcast episode.
That was a common question that I saw was, what was the difference between palm oil and coconut oil? Because coconuts come from palm trees.
They're both oils that are both mostly saturated fat. I know that coconut oil is 90 or 92% saturated fat, and I think palm oil is like 80 something. It's up there, but a lot of the difference has to do with sustainability, and both saturated fat can be gotten in so many other ways.
Mm-hmm.
And so I get more of my saturated fat from the other resources. I wish I would say that it's because of sustainability and whatnot. I mean, I do. I'm mindful of that, not as much as like my vegan friends are. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
But okay, so I do eat coconut oil every day. In fact, well, it's not coconut oil. It's C8, which is caprylic acid, which is basically brain octane. Anyone that has ever followed me online, I've been a huge fan of Bulletproof Coffee, Dave Asprey. I've learned a lot from him and reading his blog post. His podcast is one of the first ones that I started listening to that had to do with nutrition. The man is highly intelligent, and he's got great. It's a great place to start learning. Have you ever listened to any of his podcasts?
Yeah, he's great.
And I have a mutual friend. So I'm really, I don't know if he does podcast interviews with other people, but I'm going to try my darndest to get him on here, because that would be super cool.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I'm a huge fan, and I consume brain octane every single day.
Same.
For multiple reasons. And have you read his book Headstrong yet?
I haven't.
Okay, this is a good book.
List of to reads.
Yeah, I know. There's so many. Which, once we get everything set for our website, we need to compile a list of all of the books that we recommend.
Yeah, for sure.
And documentaries. Because we're constantly throwing them out.
I know. We could put them in the show notes in the meantime, but
yeah, that's a good idea. Robert, as he gets in.
Ooh, he's going to hate me for that.
But speaking of documentaries, have you watched any good ones lately?
I haven't watched a documentary in a while because I've been listening to audiobooks more than anything. Right. So I haven't watched one in a while. There is one that I've had probably about 5 different people message me just in the last week, which I'm not sure if it's because of the coconut oil debacle from the USAA Today, not USAA, USA Today. That's wrong. USAA is my bank, which is an awesome bank. Shout out to USAA and taking care of military and ex-military people. But yeah, it's called What the Health. It's a catchy name, and it was actually published this year in 2017. Yeah, I haven't heard of that one yet. So,
which I will still watch older documentaries because I like to learn from them.
Yeah,
but obviously the more recent ones are more up to date and whatnot. And it's definitely more of a anti-animal meat documentary.
Yeah.
And that's one point that I want to make is that I'm not a vegan, but I don't eat the standard American diet that's full of conventionally raised meat. That all of the meat and poultry are inhumanely treated, and there's a bunch of terrible things that come along with it. And there's never been a good study that has actually looked at someone who eats whole natural vegetables and fruit and products from our earth, in addition to healthy meat that is wild, that isn't given any hormones, antibiotics, it treated, humanely, whatnot.
Yeah. Responsibly raised.
Responsibly raised. That's the word I was looking for. So you read Dr. Mark Hyman's book, Eat Fat, Get Thin, right? Mm-hmm. What does he call his way of eating? The paganism. Paleo veganism, which I love that when I read that book. So that's another book that I recommend is Eat Fat, Get Thin. This gentleman, he is an MD, but Western medicine doctor, Eastern medicine minded. He's very much, I need that t-shirt too, right? We need to come up with a phrase for those kind of doctors, right? That Robert, that's another job. Right. Write it down.
He's shooting us fiery daggers right now.
Exactly. So this is one of many books that he's written, but this is his most recent book that he wrote, Eat Fat, Get Thin. And he actually has a great explanation in why we not only shouldn't fear fat, but we should put it into our diet.
Yeah.
But he also addresses the fact that, of course, you're going to see these vegan documentaries and vegan books that quote, all these people, all these studies that change their whatever. But this is where doing the right kind of study is next to impossible, because usually if you have someone change their diet and they go from the standard American diet to eating all vegetables, well, of course they're going to be healthier.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
And more likely, they're probably going to quit smoking at the same time. And most likely, they're probably going to add exercise on. And they're probably going to start looking at stress decreasers, like maybe getting their sleep under control. So all of these factors go to person A, who starts off as the standard stereotypical American. And now the vegan, and I'm not anti-vegan, guys. I mean,
this is just an example.
Exactly. But this is my way of getting people to think outside of the box. So when you watch these documentaries, when you read these books, be thinking about the other side, because that's what a true scientist does, and trying to prove them wrong. Like what thought process would be, well, yes, but,
Yeah.
And that's a good point that he makes in this book, is that, you can, there's plenty of studies that look at the standard American diet and you go to veganism, or standard American diet and paleo, but never what the combination of the two lifestyles. Because of course, if we get back to eating whole, unprocessed, natural foods, the foods that humans have been eating before the industrialized state that we're in, the state that's full of environmental stresses, of fake foods, frankenfoods, of process, of chemicals that our bodies were not meant to ingest. I think that's the direction that people need to start going, know? So, okay. So let's get back to coconut oil, because that's what started this whole debacle, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So the whole idea is they want us to believe we shouldn't eat coconut oil because it's high in saturated fat. So if anything, I want people to understand that saturated fat does not equal bad.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But saturated fat can be consumed too much of.
Yeah.
That grammar was terrible. You can consume too much.
I get your point, though.
I'm not about perfection, right? Y'all.
Arg. Bad.
I did go to college, and but so that being said, their statement that it raises cholesterol is true, but they don't tell the rest of the truth. And the rest of the truth is what they don't want you to know, because it would go against their main pocket liners. And so one thing that the What the Health, the documentary, shows is that all of these major organizations that create these guidelines, that create these recommendations, the sponsors, they're all nonprofit organizations. That's crap.
Yeah.
Right? They're profiting. Trust me. They're profiting billions of dollars. And this documentary shows, for example, the American Diabetic Association, and they show all of these, and they're mostly food companies.
Yeah.
Food companies that go against, I mean, like literally it's humorous when you it's almost like, are you joking? The American Diabetic Association takes how many millions of dollars from what company? And these are all companies that, there is no doctor that's going to tell you, you should go eat this sugar-laden food, diabetic patient. But yet, if you go to their website, all of the recommendations are, yes, you should eat this food and then that food. I mean, it's crazy. But the American Heart Association is the worst. Like, it shows you all of the different sponsors that donate billions of dollars.
Yeah.
And so that's why any recommendation for nutrition, when it comes to big organizations like that, should automatically just be discounted, in my opinion.
Or at least question it. At least have it pique your interest of how you can question it or why that information is even there in the first place.
Absolutely. Because do you think if I'm the owner of General Mills and I give $10 million to the American Heart Association, but they come out and say, hey, guess what? Eating cereal is bad for you for all these reasons. Do you think I'm going to give them that money next year? Absolutely not.
Which reminds me of being a kid and eating Cheerios and seeing really, really big on the box helps lower cholesterol.
Yeah. So that brings up another good point. Do you know that label, you have to pay for that?
Yeah.
Because food companies know that label is great marketing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, it just makes me angry.
Yeah.
I'm so angry. So essentially you're telling me that I can buy the "This is healthy" label if I have enough money in my pocket?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. That's what I'm telling you.
For example, recently they changed the name of high fructose corn syrup to natural sweetener because there is there's a food revolution right now, which is the best thing and the worst thing that's like happening right now. And because of that, though, because there is this food revolution where people are actually starting to sit up and pay attention to what they're putting in their bodies, big food companies aren't going to be like, oh, well, nobody's going to buy our stuff anymore. No, they are so quick to make sure that they stay right on top of what people want. And so if people are looking for something, they now know high fructose corn syrup, that's bad. But natural sweetener, if it's natural, then it's okay. It's good marketing. Just don't fall victim to good marketing. That's what it is.
Yep. And all of these loopholes, like the natural sweetener, that makes me think of natural flavors in the beaver anal gland.
Yeah, vanilla, if y'all didn't know, vanilla comes, well, not all of it, but some of it comes from beaver buttholes. I'm just saying. I mean, just putting that out there.
That needs to be on a t-shirt. Does your belly come from beaver buttholes? That would be a great conversation starter.
My fiance did not believe me when he said that. He's like, no, why would they have vanilla extract then? And I'm like, Tanner, he's like, I doubt that they go kill beavers to get that. I was like, Tanner, it's not about that. It's not about that.
To kill, I mean, it's just like if you have a dog, you can get their anal glands expressed. That's what my understanding is. So you don't even have to kill a beaver. You just need to express their anal glands.
Yeah. Robert saying things that you can't hear and you don't want to hear. Robert is our podcast producer, by the way. He sits on every episode just so that you guys are like, who is this Robert person that they always talk about? He's our producer.
and he's in our ears and he talks and you can't hear him.
Yeah. But about the cholesterol thing, I wanted to ask you about this. Is it true that elevated insulin is a greater risk for heart disease than elevated cholesterol?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Elevated insulin and inflammation. Those are the two things that we know lead to heart disease. And the bad LDL, the small dense LDL, leads to inflammation.
Yeah.
So we know that the more inflammatory cytokines that are happening in your body, the more prone you are to having a cardiac event.
Yeah.
So yes, absolutely. And that's the thing that, again, big food companies don't want you to understand is that so much of the processed foods that we're eating cause unnatural spikes in insulin.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll do plenty of podcasts about that, but that's definitely, when it comes down to it, what you should care about is what's going to prevent me from having a cardiac event. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you right now that eating fake foods that have to go through a huge chemical process that are they're poison. They're not only going to lead to heart disease, but they're going to lead to cancer. They're going to lead to autoimmune disorders. They're going to lead to diabetes. They're going to lead to all sorts of stuff. Let's just talk about, we're all over the place. Let's talk about trans fats.
It's because it all connects though. It does. And there's so much that we could talk about on this subject that it all relates to each other.
And this, like I said, this is going to be the first of many podcasts that we do about this topic. Mm-hmm. But if anything, I want people to start questioning fake news And not, this isn't fake news. I mean, the American Heart Association definitely came out, but just not blindly trusting.
Yeah.
And just like I said at the beginning of this podcast, don't blindly trust me. I mean,
yeah.
I have no nutrition degree. I'm a freaking anesthesiologist. And I can only imagine, some of the naysayers will be like, what do you know? You're an anesthesiologist. You are right. But I know more than the average person because I've read a crap ton.
Yes.
I'm continuing to learn, and I don't know everything, but I do know that I don't trust the American Heart Association.
Yeah.
And if you want to keep following their guidelines, good luck. Keep watching your waistline, keep watching your diabetes, keep watching your hypertension, and all of that stuff get out of control because that's what's happened.
Yeah.
A nation that has followed their advice has become a sick nation.
We are the sickest and heaviest we have ever been. And we still think that the advice that we're receiving is really good advice.
Exactly.
That's one thing that really, if anything, puts into perspective, just surprises me about how much, like I talked about earlier, people are just so willing to just listen to whatever's told to them. I mean, even though that's what we're doing right now, but if anything, we're just trying to pique your interest on this subject so that you will go do your own research.
Absolutely.
But it just blows my mind how many people they're sick and they're overweight and they'll do the same thing for years and years and years, expecting a different result because that's what they're told to do. Instead of saying, hey, I've only gotten heavier for the past 5 years that I've been following these guidelines and nothing's changing. Why? Ask questions. Ask yourself why.
Yeah. I think it's at the beginning of Dr. Hyman's book that he talks about, like, he said he's always, I love his perspective because he's kind of the same way we are, or I am as far as being a doctor. Like, I'm constantly learning and I'm not set on one way. And he said he was actually a vegetarian for, I believe, like 10 years. And said, I've always been interested in health and fitness. And I've told plenty of people to follow a low-fat vegetarian diet. And he said that he, has always been a runner, but he realized that over the years, his waistline, despite exercising way more than the average American and eating what he thought was a healthy diet of being a vegetarian and low fat, his waistline kept growing. And he realized that something's missing. And, this is just start. Oh man, it's such a huge topic. And I want people to start thinking outside of the box for sure. Okay. So let's talk about trans fat. Okay. So trans fat, out of all the different kinds of fat. So we've got saturated, we've got monounsaturated, we've got PUFAs, polyunsaturated, which are omega-6 and omega-3s, and then trans fats. Okay. Now, trans fats are the only ones that are not naturally found in nature. Okay. They're made in a lab. And so right there, you don't have to have a science degree. You don't have to have a medical degree or a nutrition degree to know that common sense, if it has to be made in a lab, it's probably not good for our body, right? Because our bodies were designed perfectly, and it's all of the stuff that we're doing to our bodies that are causing them to not function perfectly, right?
Yeah.
So trans fats are fake fats. And what happens is that in a lab, it has to do with the chemical bond. It's on the trans side, the other side. So when it is seen by the body, it's seen as something foreign, right? And what it will do, so imagine you've got a cell membrane. So it will get into the membranes of these cells and permanently mutate them. And so we already know that trans fats lead to cancers, lead to all sorts of inflammation, lead to bad stuff that most countries, first world countries, have banned trans fats.
Yeah.
And finally, with the day and age that we're in, with the internet and being able to spread knowledge and not just blindly trust what's on the news and what we read in, Time Magazine or USA Today, people have started educating themselves. So the layperson more than likely knows that trans is bad, but they don't know why.
Yeah.
And they don't realize that there's a lot of foods they're eating that still have trans fats in them, but they're less than that minimum level that they don't have to put it on the label. And so they're still getting trans fats. And trans fats are bad in every single way.
Yeah.
So hydrogenated oils. So I remember, okay, this just tells you how jacked everything is. My mom, she got her nutrition degree. Okay. She was actually a dietitian for MHMR when I was young, and she loves baking. I remember we always had a thing of Crisco.
Yes, I was just gonna say Crisco.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Like and of course, everything that I've learned, I've told my parents, okay, you need to read this. You need to read this.
Yeah.
My mom, she feels so guilty. She's like, I thought I was feeding y'all healthily, and I just wasn't. Healthfully, not healthily. I like to make up words, y'all, just so you know. But Crisco is a great example of a trans fat that's hydrogenated, and the more hydrogenated it is, so you'll see partially hydrogenated versus non-partially hydrogenated. The more hydrogenated it is, the more solid it is at room temperature, and that leads to making your flaky, crispy stuff more crispy. And yeah, I know you have a look of disgust because you know what goes along with it.
Crisco and margarine and just it grosses me out to think about. Now that I know better, it grosses me out.
I know, but it kills me how many years I bought margarine thinking that it was best for my heart. And
that it was the better option. I remember that.
Oh, yeah.
I remember that.
Oh, yeah. For years. And really up until the recent past, like, I mean, I can remember, I would say probably maybe as recent as 3 or 4 years ago, that was probably the last time I bought margarine. So, I mean, this is not, it kills me because I've told so many people bad advice based on just blindly trusting these organizations.
Yeah.
So, okay. So you had a few questions before. Have we answered?
We have pretty much covered all of them. Yeah.
Okay. So I don't want to totally blow everyone's mind and just be like, okay, I'm zoned out. What kind of questions do you have so far after hearing the talk?
Well, I guess in our opinion, if the AHA can't be trusted, that is our opinion. You're entitled to yours.
Yep.
But where can people go to find information that they can trust, or to question, like, what can they do to empower their knowledge so that they can make an educated decision based off of what they should believe and what they shouldn't?
That's a great question. And in the show notes, we're definitely going to have to recommend a few of the books that I recommend starting at. Going to a reliable source like a Dr. Mercola, a Dr. Hyman, Dr. Perlmutter. He's the one that wrote Grain Brain and Brain Maker. Let's see. Dave Asprey is a great resource. He is super smart and interviews some of the best. His Bulletproof Radio, his podcast is one that I would highly recommend. Just knowing, not getting your news from the news.
Yeah.
Or your information from the news, because all of those have ulterior motives. But here's the deal. I want the listener to be like, well, Lauren, don't you have an ulterior motive? Well, this is where you start learning and you start you start changing your mindset of not just blindly trusting whatever you read and hear. And like I said at the beginning, don't just trust us because we're saying it. Right. But also be empowered that, you can learn as all of this and more, but you have to change your mindset of looking at it like a scientist.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. It's like being in the courtroom. If you are ideally, if you're in the American court system, you're innocent until proven guilty, right? But it's backwards. We haven't proven eating saturated fat leads to high cholesterol, which leads to heart disease at all. There's no solid evidence, and the evidence that people quote, there's so much that's hidden about it that it's not good science. So the verdict is not. It's not out. I mean, or the verdict is out because. Wait, it's not out.
It's not out.
Like, wait, that
It's
we
not out.
we haven't proven the way that these authorities want
Right.
us to believe.
Right.
So,
And that's why I was saying that we are literally on the forefront of a food revolution right now. Like, that's why I was so excited to do this. This is because, like, I don't think people realize that there is a really big shift that started just a couple years ago, and it was just little questions about our, the American Heart Association, or why we are the way we are, so overweight and so sick. It was just a little voice that's getting louder and louder and louder. And
yeah,
because of that, like I said, the marketing is getting better and better to
yep,
combat with that. So you have to empower yourself to know the difference.
yep. But it's pretty cool though, because we are living in the day and age that we are. An article like that can't just be taken for gospel anymore.
Yes.
The way it used to.
Yeah.
The power of that kind of article, even 10 years ago, would have been way more than it is now because of social media, because of platforms like podcasts. The way of sharing knowledge is so different now. And so, if this podcast or any of our podcasts have been helpful, it's all about spreading knowledge, because knowledge is potential power. And, again, I've said multiple times, and I will continue saying it, you can lead a horse to water, you can't make him drink, but I want to make him thirsty to drink.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that with our podcast, we're making people thirsty for more knowledge, because you don't have to live diabetic the rest of your life. You don't have to live in whatever current state of health you're in, because more than likely you can make some changes, and your symptoms can get better, if not completely gone. But big food companies, big pharmaceutical companies, the government, medicine, they don't want you to know that, because if we all just changed our diet and ate the way we were supposed to, all of them would go under.
Yeah.
No money would be made. So they want us to stay sick. And that's unfortunate truth of this all.
Yeah.
So I hope that the listener has become empowered to know that your body is this perfectly designed machine, and if it's given the fuel that it's meant to if it's designed to have, it perfectly functions. So you have to start seeing food as fuel, and what kind of fuel are you giving your body? And if you're giving your body a bunch of frankenfoods and a bunch of foods that go through terrible chemical processes and are wrought with GMOs and all of the bad things that come along with the standard American diet food, your body is not going to be functioning the way it's supposed to, and you're going to end up in a very sick, disease state. And that's the direction our country is going, and it's scary. And so one person at a time, we're trying to make a change. And Cinthanie, what do you have to tell our listener?
You are a good person, and you deserve good things to happen to you.
I.e.
like eating coconut oil.
Exactly.
So I'm sure you can tell where we stand. Take the information for what you will, but I'm just saying I'm still going to be eating coconut oil. You will have to pray it out of my cold, dead hands.
Absolutely. And you guys can find us on all of our social media platforms. You can find Cinthanie. What's your IG and your Facebook?
My Instagram is Cinthanie. My Facebook.
Spell that for everyone, because everyone thinks that we're saying symphony. And
I know. It's CINTHANIE.
It's the coolest name. I love it. I really do.
I hated it as a kid, but now as an adult, I was like, thank you for the best brand name ever, Mom.
All right.
Because when you say Cinthanie, there's only one that you think so.
Exactly.
But you can find it. My Instagram is Cinthanie. My Snapchat is Cinthanie with a P at the end. And then my Facebook is Cinthanie Petrolia.
Excellent. Excellent. About to be Cinthanie McAllister,
It's going
though.
to be a whole lot easier to find me.
My girl's getting married in the fall. Woo, woo.
Oh, in 82 days.
We're going to have to figure out how to do a podcast around your wedding. You know that, right?
Oh my gosh, it's going to be so crazy.
I know. We'll figure out
So
something.
crazy.
But we are
Anyway.
going to do a live podcast from New Orleans.
We have a little something up our sleeve.
Oh, we do. We
Just
do.
know.
So you guys, thank you so much for listening. You can find me on Facebook, on Instagram, on Snapchat. I've got multiple things. I've got my Dr. Lauren Fitz like page, the Club Fitz Fitness like page. On Instagram, I'm at Club Fitz Fitness and at Fitz. I mean, I'm all over the place, but I constantly am doing live broadcast on Facebook.
Yeah.
I try and do most of my health and fitness ones that are related on the Dr. Lauren Fitz one, but I'm constantly doing content that helps people have knowledge and power that makes them more fits and healthy. So, so we thank you guys for listening to this episode, this emergency podcast episode, and we hope that you have a day that is more fits and healthy. Ciao. Make sure that you find us on social media. You can find Cinthanie on Instagram and Facebook at Cinthanie. So that's CINTHANIE, and on Snapchat at Cinthanie P. And find me on social media platforms like Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, all at Club Fitz Fitness. Remember, that's FITZ Fitness. And on Snapchat, just at Club Fitz. I appreciate your time listening so much. If you enjoyed this episode of the Fitz and Healthy podcast, can you please go do me a favor and go subscribe at whatever platform that it is that you listen to podcasts. Leave a review. We read every single review, and we appreciate the time that you take to leave your thoughts and opinions. Now, also remember, while I am a medical doctor, the information I provide here is not intended to provide medical advice or a professional diagnosis, opinion, treatment, or services to you or to any other individual. I am providing general information for educational and informational purposes only, and it is not a substitute for medical or professional care. You should not use this information in place of a visit, call, consultation, or the advice of your physician or other healthcare provider. The information I share is not intended to treat, cure, or diagnose any disease or medical condition. If you believe you have a medical emergency, just call 911 immediately or your physician. Now, enough of that medical legal jargon. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. I appreciate your time. Now, go live a fits and healthy life.